Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Bathys here, back again with another upload and a Bathys thing and reviews. Today we're gonna talk about this beautiful, small, portable DAC/desktop amplifier. Now, for those who are new to the world of audio or high-resolution sound, what is a DAC? A DAC is a digital to analog converter. DAC literally stands for that, digital to analog converter. So let me explain the process before we talk about this product in general and talk about all the quirks and features and why this product is so special in comparison to a DAC found in other devices. So, what is a DAC? Of course, I said it, it's a digital to analog converter which converts digital signals sent over from a phone, an MP3 player, a media player, a desktop, or a laptop, or a tablet, right? And of course, with digital streaming services, you can download high-resolution files from the internet, buy them separately from a store, or of course, use high-resolution streaming services like Tidal, Deezer, Qobuz, etc., to get the best, files available. Usually, these streaming services do go up to 24-bit, 192 kilohertz, depending on, of course, what is used and how the artist order it to be recorded. Now, so all audiophiles and all music is recorded in a different way. The higher the bit rate, the more depth and the more clarity and the more submersive the more immersive the audio experience will be. And this thing really helps a lot when it comes to, listening to music in a more traditional way. So, of course, like I said before, there are two variations of a DAC. You have a Bluetooth DAC, which basically pairs your Bluetooth headphones to the DAC and gives you an amplification based on wireless sound. Now, of course, there is a downside behind that because Bluetooth, unlike how practical that thing is, it is, of course, very, very flawed. So the traditional 3.5 jack or 4.4 balanced outputs are gonna produce the best overall improvement in sound when it comes to using a DAC with a portable or standalone device. So today in this video we're going to talk about the KA17, what makes this DAC so special. We're going to talk about all the quirks and features. So if you like everything audio, you've come to the right place. Please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel and click on the bell below to, of course, never miss another upload. I have a lot of audio partnerships that I'm working with behind the scenes, so stay tuned for that. And without further ado, let's switch the camera and take a closer look at the Fiio Ka17. Whoosh. Alright, now that we got the cinematics out of the way, let's talk Fiio Ka17 and let's talk about box and presentations first. So, what's included in the package is, of course, a carton box, right? It's standard. I mean, it is not the best presentations I've seen, it's not the worst presentation I've seen. Now, of course, for $149 retail, this thing doesn't come with, a leather case and a wooden box and etc. Now, of course, you have to spend a lot more money than that if you want to experience a luxury format like Astral & Kern, for example. Very high-end media players and DACs, starting about $800 to $10,000. But anyways, we're talking about an affordable pair of audio equipment here. $149, very affordable, very cheap in comparison to Astral & Kern or Fio's more high-end Q series, the Q15 and the Q7, which starts at about $500 to $800. But I picked this piece because, first of all, it's portable, it's not heavy, and I will get into the overall build later in today's video. So, the box, basically what you get in the box is a Type-C to Type-C cable, which is breaded, very nice. I don't like to see plastic on cables. That's what I wish the Focal Bathys came with, this breaded cable and then longer format, because this is not usable. Really, this is so small. Fiio, I would definitely recommend maybe give them a bigger cable or give no cable at all. That's kind of, because usually when these things are targeted for audiophiles and people who love listening to wired music, they have longer USB Type-C cables on standby and don't need a cable included like this. This is just better to give nothing. Anyways, then of course we have the Type-C to Type-A USB plug in case your laptop or desktop, if you want to use it for that purposes, doesn't have a Type-C input or output. You can use this and still use the KA17. Then of course we have the KA17 itself, which is built from solid aluminum, makes it feel a lot less heavy and of course a lot more premium. Yeah, this is not plastic. I would consider for 149 bucks that this thing was made out of plastic, but it's not. In terms of overall portability, as you can see, it's almost as big as my hand palm, right? So very, very portable. Hence why I chose this over, for example, the Fiio Q15 and the Q7. These are their more high-end real desktop powered portable amplifiers. They weigh about 400 grams. They're insanely heavy. And of course, they have better specifications than this. Of course, obviously, because the build is bigger, etc. But in terms of portability and the most performant, this is what Fiio offers for their customers. This is the KA17. You have also the KA13 and the KA7, which is the entry-level wired DAC. And of course, you have the BTR series, which is the Bluetooth version of their KA series. You have the BTR13, the BTR17, and the BTR5, which is about 20 bucks. So there is something for everyone, right? So in case you don't have the budget to spend almost in the north of 200 bucks on an amplifier / converter for your headphones, you can always find something more affordable to your liking. Fiio has a huge array of media players, DACs, and amplifiers. Anyways, let's talk about build. Alright, so let's talk about the build. Of course, like I said, this has an aluminum chassis and has a leather case included when you buy the KA17. It feels very nice, it feels premium, so good job, Fiio. Anyways, how do you use the Fiio KA17 in a regular space? Now, you have this beautiful Type-C port right here, and then of course you have another Type-C port here. Now, there are two different ways you can go about this. Yeah, of course, if you connect the KA17 to a USB Type-C, in this case I'm using the Focal Bathys USB-C Type-C to USB Type-C cable because it's longer and more practical than the standard cable that is delivered with KA17. Usually many or most audiophiles that have a Bluetooth pair of headphones have USB Type-C cables on standby. I would recommend using at least an Type-C to Type-C cable that is provided by an audio manufacturer headphones instead of your regular Samsung USB Type-C to Type-C cable, because usually these kind of cables are made for data transfer only and not necessarily for sending audio signals to DAC. Anyways, so now you guys can see that the DAC is powered on, and I'll explain to you what the second Type-C port is for. Now, the second Type-C port is to enable the desktop mode. In a standard mode, this has a power output of 175 milliwatts from both channels. So it has a 3.5 millimeter jack right here and a 4.4 balance, so it can drive up to 650 milliwatts of power to more complex headphones, right? So for example, the Sennheiser HD 650s, etc., etc. So this actually can drive quite a lot of a variety of headphones, but in this case I don't have a planar magnetic pair of headphones, I don't have an electrostatic pair of headphones, but it does include a 3.5 millimeter jack on the Bathys or on the Bowers & Wilkins and B&Os and stuff like that. So I do tend to listen to these headphones wiredly these days because it sounds so much better. Like, the way to explain it, it's more immersive. But I'll talk about the overall sound signatures in a later part of the video. So of course 3.5 millimeter jack, 4.4 balanced for a wide variety of headphones. Of course on the display you can see the PCM rating, which is the digital conversion from Tidal, Deezer, etc. to, of course, analog signals. You have also DSD support, which supports up to 512 DCSD if you actually need that. But many audio streaming services use PCM as a standard. Anyways, then of course you have your volume up and volume down. In standard mode, this will increase in 60 increments, so 60 steps in total. But I would recommend setting it to 120 because the reason why some lower end headphones don't support a lot of power that can easily be driven with a phone or something like that, and the drivers are cheaper. So if you drive a lot of power to those drivers, you might actually damage those drivers. So in that case, always look well on the manual from the manufacturer what power your headphone drivers can actually support, and never overpower your headphones. Now usually I don't think that this thing will overpower anything except for maybe GBLs and stuff like that. Maybe you can break these drivers with this, right? But in terms of the Bathys or in terms of the PX7 S2s that I have or the Bang & Olufsen H4s, they can all drive up to 16 ohms, 32 ohms, and they don't really the drivers don't suffer a lot from power issues and stuff like that. So in that case, do be careful if you purchase something like this with what type of headphone you have. If you have lower end headphones, do keep in mind to use the 120 steps. It's safer than using the 60. But of course, with the Bathys, I'm always using the 60. Anyways, besides that, of course, the desktop mode I did explain. So if you plug in the Type-C here, right, I'm gonna do that. This is the Samsung 45 watt power charge. And now it's showing that the USB Type-C is plugged in and desktop mode can be enabled. Now I enabled desktop mode, and this can now have a power output of 670 milliwatts, and a maximum output for the 3.5 is 270 milliwatts. So even for a Bluetooth headphone like the Bathys, this thing packs a punch. And how do I explain the sound signature? What's so different between this and the wireless listening experience? So the first thing I noticed with using a external DAC is the clarity and the amount of sound that is more open. So with Bluetooth in general, I noticed that there is more emphasis on bass response and warmth, and not necessarily clarity in the higher volumes. With a external DAC like this, I noticed a more natural bass response, so not that boomy, bassy feeling that you get when you listen to these type of headphones wirelessly. You don't get that, but you do get a decent bass response, but it is different. It sounds pleasant instead of overly boomy. And this is something I like, right? Because I feel like when I'm listening to the Bathys in wireless mode, right? I feel like it's a little bit too boomy than when I listen to planar magnetic headphones at a friend's house. These headphones don't have that. They sound more open and they can spread all the different sounds more or better when you use something like this. So less bassy, but still a good bass response. More open, definitely, and clearer. That's the first thing I noticed. And then the second thing is, of course, the power output. Your headphones will be able to play a lot louder than on your regular phone or laptop. Now let's switch the camera and let's show you the different types of settings and how it's actually used. Alright, so now I have plugged in the Fiio Ka17 to my desktop, and I want to show you how to actually use this device properly. So if you use any streaming service like Tidal, Deezer, and Qobuz, first thing you gotta do is set this device up correctly. So install all the driver units for the Fiio Ka17 or any DAC, type of DAC, and then you can basically play wired music. And I'm gonna show you something real quick before we get into the actual usage of the Ka17. The DAC mode doesn't recognize the file that's playing. So right now, if I click on 92 to 192 kilohertz, I have files that can stream into 24-bit 192 kilohertz. So as you can see, I'm gonna zoom in. It says right there, 24-bit 192 kilohertz. Now, if we look on the DAC, it says 192 kilohertz. Okay, that's good. That means I have set it up correctly, because in normal mode, it doesn't do that, right? So what you have to do in order to set up the DAC correctly is go into the settings of your streaming service. There we go. Select your sound output and change it to Fiio Q series. Normal volume I will put off, and use the exclusive mode. The exclusive mode will force Tidal to only, well, use the power that it gets from the charger to send to the DAC. And you cannot listen to anything else besides the streaming service. So keep that in mind. You cannot play volume audio from games, YouTube in exclusive mode. So exclusive mode for Tidal on desktop will enhance the sound quality and power put out to any device on, well, the laptop or desktop. So, for example, if I would plug the Bathys into the normal 3.5 jack, it will actually use the built-in DAC from the laptop and use the power, but it would sound less spacious and less loud than, of course, a separate DAC can do. So if I disable this, for example, now you will see it comes back, if I'm playing this, to 44.1 kilohertz. Because it doesn't use exclusive mode. It doesn't have enough power to give you the highest bitrate possible. But again, if I change it back to exclusive mode on Tidal, and every high-end streaming service has this, now it recognizes that this file is recorded in 24-bit 192 kilohertz. Now, this DAC can support up to file decoding in 32-bit 738 kilohertz. Now, these files are usually, well, for the artists themselves or are recorded in the studio on the spot, but it's usually not available on the market on any streaming services I've seen, but it can. Now, it uses the PCM format, but you also have the DSD 512 format, which is a codec that's even harder to decode, but will give you an even better sound experience. Anyways, let's show you the settings and how to set this up. So now that you set up your DAC on Tidal, Deezer, Spotify, you will go into the settings, right? If you have a low-end headphone, oh wait, I rotated the display. Oh no, that is not good. Anyways, rotate display. 1 second, give me a moment. Ah, perfect. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, that rotated display. We can set the display timer. I'm gonna put that off because I'm not gonna use that. Anyways, U2 or U1 audio. U1 audio is for Spotify or anything low end. So 32-bit, kilobit, etc. That uses the U1 setting. If you use high resolution audio, you use the U2 setting. It will sound more rich and more balanced. Anyways, then moving on, we have the language. It's either Chinese or English, so put that on English, of course. This is the software version, so it uses software version 0.99, which is the latest one, if I'm not mistaken. Recovery mode is if you break the DAC. So yes, you can actually break this thing. If you break it or damage it, you can use the recovery mode to set up the new firmware and stuff like that. Anyways, high gain or low gain kind of speaks for itself. In many occasions, higher-end DACs/DAPs, so digital analog players or digital analog converters, have more modes than low and high. So low gain means for every volume increment you increase, it will increase the volume in a lower setting. With high gain, it means that the DAC will power, well, or with every volume gain you go up, it will give more power to the headphone more than in low gain. So for lower end headphones, I would always recommend going with gain low. And for higher end headphones, like of course the Fiio Ka17, you can leave it in high gain because yeah, it does require a bit of power. Although the Fiio Ka17s are easily powered by a phone or something like that, but it's nicer to have the DAC set up to high gain. Anyways, filters are very difficult to explain, but filters basically make sure that all things that are recorded in the studio, like you know, imperfections and stuff like that, are filtered out. Now, in many occasions, I would leave it too slow, because the reason why, you're using a DAC to get the best audio quality out of your headphones as possible. So putting on extreme filters will make sure that the sound of the media player is not is not coming through the headphone in the way you want it to. So I will always let that go, or I will always put that to slow. Reason why, it will still filter a couple things, but not everything. Anyways, then of course the volume step, like I said, I put it to 60, but for lower end headphones, put it to 120. Reason why, you won't overpower your drivers and you won't damage your headphones. Just be warned. I'm saying this for your own good. Anyway, so I put it to 60, and I'm using currently volume 44 out of 60, but you can also use 120. And will allow you to, well, customize the volume settings a little bit better. DDF is not necessary because we're not using DSD files. And advanced left or right means if your hearing is not, you know, balanced and one ear needs to have a little bit more power than the other, you can actually customize this with that. So in that regard, use the volume button up or down to create more power to one ear cup or another. Anyways, dimmer means exactly what it means, dimming the screen. So this is the dimmest setting in case you live with a brother that wants to sleep at night and you want to listen to some tunes. You can actually use the device without overlighting the room. In many cases, I find it a ridiculous setting, and I don't know why they included it, but it's included into the device in general. So yeah, kind of nice, but unnecessary. And of course, the equalizer. The equalizer is a very interesting thing. So you can use the Fiio Connect app to recognize your desktop DAC/amplifier, and you can use the built-in equalizers. You can customize your equalizer, or you can bypass the equalizer. I always leave this on bypass. Reason why? Because on my laptop, I use the Boom 3D application. It costs money, don't get me wrong, but it's a 31 band equalizer that will allow you to adjust each frequency for your headphone instead of just the 5 normal band or the 4 band equalizer you find on basically any normal, you know, headphone. So yeah, 31 band equalizer allows you to tweak a lot more frequencies than a 4-band equalizer, which usually has the 20 Hz to 20 kilohertz all wrapped up in 4 bands or 5 bands. So that's for that. So I always use the bypass equalizer because I'm using something different. And on the phone, I use the EQ bypass as well because I'm using wavelet on my phone for a better sound performance and for a more immersive sound experience. So that's that. But of course, you can customize it as well by user 1, user 2, and user 3. You can select that and customize it in the application if you want to. And then, of course, we have the max volume. For example, for lower end headphones, like I said, you might put it down, not at 120, but maybe at 100. But I will always leave that at max volume because I have headphones that can easily get that. So not worried at all. And now we're back to the rotating display. So that's basically how the DAC works. So let's switch the camera back and let's talk a bit more about this product. Alright, so that's basically how the Fiio Ka17 works. So let's talk about sound quality in general. So I have 5 different pair of headphones that I'm using with this device, and I've been testing this device for a week now, something like that, or around a week, maybe a bit less. But what I noticed exactly is a more natural bass response, clearer mids, and more punchy highs. And it's not the same with every type of headphone. With the Bathys, I did notice a very big improvement in sound quality. Because the Bathys in general in its wireless mode has a more bassy sound signature, just like Qobuz and etc., which I don't like. With the DAC, it's more natural and more immersive, and all higher frequencies are produced more natural and are amplified, which I do like. Then, of course, on the Bang & Olufsen, it is different. I would definitely say, if I plug this into the Fiio Ka17, that the headphone sounds a lot more warm than clear. Which is not necessarily the sound signature of B&O, because B&O is kind of known for its clarity and its, insane depth. The drivers, of course, are also a part of that. But what I noticed with the Fiio Ka17, if I plug it into the wired jack mode, is that the headphone will play a lot louder and a lot more balanced than in its Bluetooth mode. So, good improvement. On the other hand, talking about a bad improvement, we're talking about the Sennheiser Momentum tweaks. These sound quite good for about $350 when they were new, and it was my first more high-end pair of headphones. When I plugged these into the Fiio Ka17, they actually sounded quieter. Like, there wasn't anything there. Like, I don't understand, because I did love these headphones a lot, but knowing that in wired mode these sound trashy is very disappointing. Now, of course, every headphone is built differently, and I do think that these are actually built for wireless listening and wireless listening only, and the jack is only in case you don't have battery power for the headphone. But yeah, very disappointed on the performance of the Momentum trees with the Fiio Ka17. And then with the Bowers & Wilkins, it's kind of in the middle. The Bowers & Wilkins performed better than I expected, because the equalizer on the Bowers & Wilkins cannot be bypassed. So in that case, if you buy a Bowers & Wilkins pair of headphones, you are kind of stuck with the standard equalization from the factory, and it had mixed results when using these wired with the cable that is included. They sound good, but they don't sound as good as these. So overall conclusion, is it worth your money? Is it worthy of consideration? What should you do? In my humble opinion, for $149, it is very much worth it. On the other hand, it really depends on what you're looking for. In many occasions, Fio's sound signature or Fio's ability in making types DACs like this is to aim at a more natural response at all frequencies. So if you are a bass head, if you love rock, punchy, unnatural, lower frequencies, this is not the thing for you. The reason why? This is aimed for the audiophile that wants to hear the most natural sound signature as possible. In case you are like me and want to get a lot more from your premium headphones and want a more immersive and less bloated experience, then this is your first step into the world of high fidelity sound. So, is it worth that retail price? I definitely think so. Yeah, this thing is very amazing, and that's why you always say don't judge a book by its cover, because this thing is powerful and this thing really packs punch. So I'm very curious to see this DAC being used with other headphones and maybe use them with some planners and stuff like that if I get my hands on them. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any more questions about the Fiio Ka17 or about any type of DAC in general, please reach out to me in the description down below. This was Liam, also known as Bathys, signing out.